Hi guys, I'm quite late with this video about my best books of 2020 so far, but the thing is, for the longest time I wasn't sure whether I should even make this video, because to be honest, 2020 hasn't been that great a reading year for me so far, at least quality-wise. Quantity is a different matter. But you know what? If I can turn things around and make the second half of 2020 dramatically better reading quality-wise, as I fully intend to do, then chances are that most of the books that I would name as my favorites now won't make it onto the final best of 2020 list. So if I don't talk about them now, then I might never mention them again. So I thought that I should take this opportunity and tell you about them again. So I have compiled a top 10 out of the roughly 80 books that I have read so far in 2020. They are in no particular order. First book I have is The Lie by Helen Dunmore. This is a historical novel set shortly after World War I, in which a young man returns home from the trenches in France to Cornwall, where he is then standing in the ruins of his old life. But in fact, part of him, the most important part of him, never left the trenches at all. This is a very quiet novel and a very well-crafted psychological exploration, in the course of which the emotional turmoil that the protagonist is in with his PTSD gets revealed slowly, and with some heartbreaking reveals in the later chapters which make you see everything that was told before in a slightly different way. I think this is the only book so far this year to which I have dedicated a single book review video, so that tells you a lot. And Winter Count by Barry Lopez is a very slim short story collection about different people's relationship with nature and wildlife and wilderness, and if and how they can reconcile that with their existence as people living in the modern world and in societies that are largely divorced from the natural world. I thought that only one or two of the stories in here were a little bit pretentious, but in a harmless way, and the rest of them were the opposite. They were rather understated, and their impact crept up on you quietly, and they were quite impressive in their efficiency, I guess. The Lost Man by Jane Harper is a murder mystery set in the Australian outback in Western Queensland. I'm not going to bore you with another one of my lectures about Australian cattle stations, because that would be my third. But this is a fascinating, isolated setting, and the book highlights some issues in small towns and among families in these isolated places. Not social issues for once, but rather in the way that these people live with each other and that family members treat each other. I'm being vague here, but you know, spoilers, it is a crime novel. And Lanny by Max Porter is also about life in a small town or a village, but of a very different kind. It is set in a village somewhere in London's commuter belt, and it is told as a chorus of voices of the villagers. It is very clever and very amusing, sometimes in a sad way, and it highlights the damaging effects of people's meanness and base behavior and sensationalism and the unnecessary anguish that they can cause. Doesn't sound like that much fun, but trust me, it's the cleverly constructed narration that makes this book fun to read. The Return of John Macnab by Andrew Greig is a retelling of John Macnab by John Buchan. It is an adventure story set in the Scottish Highlands, but it has a very strong political agenda. It was published in 1996, but it is partly still relevant today. Its central theme is the question of land ownership and of access rights to land and resources. And Master Georgie by Beryl Bainbridge is another historical novel. It is about a group of civilians who go into the Crimean War without a clear idea of what they are getting themselves into and what is happening all around them. It highlights the sad and disturbing absurdity of war and of history in general, I guess. And then we have Walking Home by Simon Armitage. I haven't actually talked about this book on my channel yet because it is nonfiction, and almost all my nonfiction reading of 2020 has been complete and utter crap. So I haven't got enough material yet to make a nonfiction wrap-up that doesn't suck. Anyhow, this is an account of the poet Simon Armitage's walk of the Pennine Way from north of the Scottish border down to his home in West Yorkshire. And on the way, he supported himself with poetry readings. This was a little bit amusing because Simon Armitage did the Pennine Way in a decidedly genteel fashion. Not only did he sleep in warm and comfortable accommodation every night, but he also had his luggage transferred to him from accommodation to accommodation along all the long distance trails in the UK. There are companies who will transport your luggage for you during your hiking day. So Armitage was only carrying a day pack, yet still it was such a big deal for him. And he is an able-bodied person, mind you, or as able-bodied as you can be if you've been sitting at the desk for 4 decades or thereabouts. So that makes it a little bit funny, but it is so charming. And I actually listened to the audiobook of this, and that was such a treat because it is narrated by Simon Armitage himself. But it's also good to have the book for the pictures and for some of Simon Armitage's poems that he read along the way. And you may have noticed that I read a lot of romance novels this year. I mean, if not now, when? But accordingly, a high percentage of my favorite books so far are romance novels. So there is Mended with Gold by Welch. This is a very sweet novella which chronicles very realistically what it is like to meet a new person in whom you have a romantic interest, and how you get to know them and how you go from projecting a persona upon them to actually understanding them. And to make it a little more interesting, it has two main characters with rather heavy but not exaggerated issues and baggage. Whistling in the Dark by Tamara is set in New York of the Jazz Age, the very early Jazz Age, just before the beginning of the Prohibition. It is a love story between two young men who are both a little bit lost, or a lot lost actually. It has a very vivid setting and the characters are just the sweetest, and there's a crocodile in it. I love crocodiles. But what I loved the book most for was actually the writing style. The style is effortlessly fluid, and there is a pianist in the book. One of the protagonists is a pianist, and actually the writing style reminded me a bit of what it is like to watch a practiced pianist play and watch their hands fly over the keys while they are playing some extremely dreamy, romantic piece of music. And Glitterland by Alexis Hall, who has advanced into the ranks of my favorite authors. Glitterland is about a posh young author who can be a little bit of an asshole sometimes, but that is mostly due to excessive self-loathing because Ash, that's his name, has bipolar disorder. And now he falls in love with the most unlikely person of them all, an uneducated wannabe photo model from Essex. I admired the book for how effortlessly it went from being laugh out loud funny in 1 second to being absolutely heartbreaking in the next. And I was often laughing while I was still crying real tears from how heartbreaking it was. An absolutely charming book. And with my 10th and final item in this list, I'm actually cheating a little because it's not a book at all, it's a character. So last week I read Alexis Hall's Arden and Ives trilogy, which is comprised of the books How-To-Bang-A-Billionaire, How to Blow It with a Billionaire, and How to Belong with a Billionaire. So yes, this is 50 Shades of Gay. I'm going to talk about it more in my next wrap-up. For now, suffice it to say that it's never going to be one of my favorite books, or trilogies, because I expected it to be more than it was, and I think it could have been more than it was considering who its author is. However, the protagonist and narrator, Arden St. Ives, is one of the most endearing characters that I have ever read anywhere in literature. I completely fell in love with him, and that's why I love the books, even though I don't, like I said, I thought that there was much more potential in them than was realized. But I love the character, and that's why they deserve a place on this list, or Arden St. Ives does. So that's it for my favorite books of the year so far. And now that I think about it, and now that I've filmed this video, I have to admit there has been quite some quality in my reading year after all. I still hope that your reading year is going better than mine and is more to your satisfaction than mine is to mine. I'll see you again very soon with another video. Bye!